So that was cool. It seemed like everybody, for the most part, had something. I'll check in with everybody, but are you enjoying this? Is this miserable for you?
It's kind of miserable for me.
I mean people.
The part in Unreal is a bit miserable.
That's why I'm not in gaming mode.
No, Unreal can be a pain in the butt the first few times you use it, just to figure it out. But it actually, the more you do this, the more it actually is not that complicated, and it's actually a pretty nice pipeline. So bear with me. I think it'll be pretty satisfying though to start to see your own characters sort of get refined in the game, and then when you can play them, like it just feels good. There's something really kind of cool about that. So it seems like a lot of the people doing it in 2D are using Construct. I know Chris is using Game Builder.
Game Maker Studio.
Game Maker, yeah. And so there's a lot of different options for this. A couple things I wanted to mention. I put up a video about using Paper 2D. Kate actually sent me another one as well. I'm going to share on there pretty soon. I just kept forgetting to post it on there. So if you decide you want to do this in 2D and use Unreal, you can. But it seems like most people are pretty deep into the engine that you're currently using. So again, with whether we're doing 2D or 3D, it's getting it implemented is the hard part. If you had a playable version of your game today, though, really now it's just iteration, right? And iterative workflows are one of the best ways of working because you're not wasting as much time. You're prototyping something, you're seeing if it works. If it works, you can make it good. If it doesn't, you can throw it away. So yes.
So I just wanted to comment because I've kind of forgotten what we talked about a little bit. I want to make sure that everyone in 2D is on the right track. So the challenge with the 3D portion is trying to get it Unreal, getting it working, all that stuff. And 2D, in addition, has to have an extra additional element to make sure that it kind of balances out.
Yeah, I think probably more than likely what I would say would be the right way of doing it. Because like the idle that you were going to do today is a little bit more work in 3D than it is in 2D, right? I would say more than likely where it'll come together for you all is like Unreal just has an environment you can import in. I think the additional work on the 2D side is you're probably going to have to make your own backgrounds and stuff like that to make it feel like it's an actual place, right? And then you can have an additional, if you want to have like your attack affect something, that's fine too, you can have that in there. But really it's just the additional part in the 2D side of it, like the fifth element that is being, the additional element that's really being implemented in the 2D part is sort of the world building part of it, like getting an environment and something that feels like a finished game, not just sort of a template. So yeah, does that answer the question?
I think so. I just bring it up because in the rubric, I try to look at the rubric so
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm guiding everyone the right way.
Yeah,
But for the 2D portion, there's the UE4.
Yeah.
That stands for Unity, right?
Yeah, Unreal Engine 4.
Unreal, yeah.
Yeah, and so it'll be the same with you all. Some of it will be the implementing into the game, and some of it will also be like, I know what the templates look like. Like, did you sort of turn this into something that looks like a rough finished game? Like, it doesn't have to be a full playable level, but a little bit of background, a little bit of environment, and then you like yours. Because you're doing it in 2D, you may end up stuck with like I know like some of the attacks maybe have like an effect to them, or Ransom was talking about possibly having like a bullet attack of some sort. Right. So it'll be just those little extra things on there. So still working on balancing it. So we'll see how that sort of turns out, and sort of what you all get may change a little bit of how I set up the rubric next time. But I think it's feeling pretty balanced. I think the parts that you all don't get for free as a 2D artist is the rendering, right? You kind of have to make every pixel yourself. The game engine parts that are a little more, or the Unreal parts that are a little more challenging it's a little bit more technical in terms of getting it to function.
I just want to make sure we didn't forget about that.
No, yeah. There is the fifth element that is in there. And right now I'm actually kind of like you were the alpha test. This class is the beta test
Yeah.
to see how this is going to, to implement, and then we'll go gold on the next one. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about on the schedule coming up. You'll notice that each day through the rest of this project, I have it blocked off on one of the animations. So we're working on the idle today, and that means next class period, the idle is what we're going to be looking at. Next class period, we're going to look at the walk and runs. Then after that, run is due. And then for the Tuesday of week 7, the 3rd, right, I'm probably going to combine that day and the punch day. So we're probably going to look at both of those in there at the same time, because I'm not going to walk through those entire animations. I'm going to talk to you about the things that make those communicate the best and show you some little technical things to change. So I think I can combine that into one lecture. In all honesty, if I really wanted to cram it, I could get today and tomorrow's lecture into one lecture too. But it wouldn't be a super exciting lecture. So I'm going to do a little bit of a shorter one, because watching people animate an idle is about as exciting as watching an idle. I'm going to lose you very quick, and that's the point that I'm going to go ahead and stop talking. So a couple of things I did want to talk about though. This is due on week 8, right? And you already know we're going to do a capture of the game. Week 8 is also the week right before spring break, which is when something else is happening too. Anybody know? Kat, I think you know what's happening. So that's when the portfolio reviews are going to be happening, or at least the midterm portfolio reviews. So I'm going to be encouraging you all to go check those out. Some of you don't have an option because you're in the class. Kat, do you know what days those are listed as? I thought that it was going to be
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday. That is not what I have in my calendar.
Thursday evening and Friday morning.
I thought that's what it was going to be on the final, but I'll have to double check on my calendar and make sure that.
Cher's kind of weird about dates.
Yeah. So I know that that's how it was going to be in the final. Was the Thursday and Friday. I was thinking we were doing Tuesday and Thursday of this one, but if so, I need to make sure I update that in my calendar, and I think the rest of the faculty probably has their own dates too. So, yeah, I'll get those final dates made sure and announce it to y'all, so y'all can come check those out. How many of you have never been to a portfolio review?
I was at a final portfolio review, but I didn't go to the one.
Yeah, they're both good.
I've never been able to go because when they've been held, I haven't been able. I've always had class or something else. I couldn't go.
Yeah, I'll get you some times on this one, and hopefully one of them will be available. In my previous class, there are 2 people who are going to be presenting this semester who have never been to a portfolio review. I know. So I'm nervous for them. You definitely want to see somebody else do it before you have to do it yourself. So I would encourage y'all to come out to that. So I just kind of wanted to look at sort of the overview of where we're headed for here. We're having this due a day before our last day of class before spring break, so the Tuesday. And that's so we can meet up one more time and have like a pantomime lecture. And so you can be doing a little bit of work over spring break if you want to on the next project. And so I feel like this will work out better to give us that, it rushes this project by a class period, but what it does is it means that over spring break, if you're not doing anything and you're just hanging out in your dorm or hanging out in your house, there's more things that you could be working on if you want to, right? All of the projects are spaced out in a way that you probably don't have to. If you're like, no, I'm going to the beach or something, that's cool, have fun. But I don't want people like sitting around on spring break being like, I wish Marlo would have given us something extra to do so I could be getting ahead. Because I know that's what y'all are thinking all the time, right? Marlo doesn't give us enough to do. So, all right, any questions? Someone? Okay. So, what I wanted to look at today, it's a little narwhal up here in the top. There's a narwhal viewing too. Cat the narwhal. I love narwhals. Of course, everybody loves narwhals. I'm not really unique in that regard. So this is where I left off. I got one thing going on mine that's really driving me nuts, which is the hair blur thing that's happening when I move my camera. I'm going to keep tinkering with that because I think that's a material issue or something.
Did you try turning off motion blur?
Where do I do that?
It should be in setting up there, the area next to where it says settings.
for now.
There's there next to it, it says project settings, I think. And search blur. Blur.
Blut.
Yeah, there you go. That seems that fix it. Seems that, or at least fix it a little bit.
Does. Looks weird now, but it'll work. I'm still kind of doing it a little bit. But yeah, I think that's it. I think it probably wouldn't do it on the, some of the other issues. So this is my current idle. It looks like bad. Right? So I wanted to talk about sort of the process of doing this. This seems like a throwaway animation. And in all honesty, it's probably not the animation you will brag about, right? This is not going to be like your showcase piece as your idle. But in a game production, it is one of the heavy lifters, right? Like if you like, one of the ways you can do some research on this of what other people's looks like, go watch a Let's Play, right? And what's going to happen is they're going to get the game started, and then they're going to want to hear their own voice, so they're going to start talking, and you're going to just sit there and watch that character idle for a little while, at least on a bad Let's Play, right? And so they're just going to like sit there and idle forever. That's what the player's going to do too. Like their mom's going to be like, "Hey, you gotta, write this thank you letter to your Aunt Rosie," or what, and they're just going to stop playing for a while, and the character's just going to idle, or maybe they're going to like get a text message, and the players, there's going to be a lot of times where the player is just idling, or where the character is just idling, and if that's doing nothing else than just like keeping the character alive, then you're kind of missing an opportunity, right? The opportunity here is to show this character some personality of this character, right? Like this Liger. Like, do I want him to look really tough and confident? Do I want him to look like he's ready to fight? Do I want him to look like scared? Right? All of that could be something that just in one pose I can convey. We know that because in Animation Fundamentals we did that, right? You had the BenBot rig. I'm guessing if you had it with Laura, if you had it with me, you got that rig and you had to make some emotions for that character, right? A pose that expressed scared or shy or sad or something like that. So we know that we can convey an emotion in a single pose. And an idle, for the most part, is a single pose that doesn't die, right? It's like a single pose that kind of moves a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out our pose that we want our character to be idling in. And that pose hopefully will carry some information about how we want to convey this character, right? To me, this one, I'm really excited about getting some really nice action attack stuff. Like I want this to be very heavy energy, like maybe like a boxer or something. I don't know. Did anybody watch that fight this weekend? My brother-in-law went and watched it. Apparently, it was pretty disturbing. So like it's the one that everybody like the pay-per-view fight. I don't remember who it was, but anyway. So I want it to feel like that, like he's ready to go, and kind of looking forward to a brawl, right? Right now, this is not conveying any of that, right? This is not conveying anything. Early on in an animation process, a lot of times they will your leads will send you a character, give you a character, and the first thing they want you to do is sort of define an idle pose, right? What does this character look like when they're idling? And so that's really what we're going to do first. So there's a couple of things we can do in Unreal or in Maya that will help us in this process. Now, even though I put all these animations in one file, we don't have to keep it that way. And just for the sake of being able to show you some stuff today, I'm not going to keep it that way. I'm going to strip all those other animations out of this and start saving this as my Liger idle animation, right? And then I can delete those other animations out of there, and I can always go back to the previous save, which is 03 here, and start working on the run from there, right? So I'm kind of breaking these out into their own individual files. Again, it's not required to do that, but I'll show you some things today that will help you if you do it that way. But they're not necessary, so I'll kind of show you. So this is my idle, just so I don't accidentally save over anything. Save scene as, and I'll go ahead and name this Liger.idle.003. Save as. And then at this point, do I have my custom? Oh. Yeah, it didn't save any of my selection sets of it. So I will go to show polygons, select all that stuff, right? And let me go ahead and get me a selection set up for that. So edit, clear all. Try that again. There we go. So you can see now my timeline with all my animations on it, but the only ones I'm really wanting to keep, the only thing I really want to keep is this very first pose, right? So I will go ahead and select everything, hit S on that first pose, and I'm going to just delete everything else. I could also go through here if I wanted to and just delete these out, because I can always come back for that. And that makes sure I don't accidentally export out a blank animation over top of one that's good, right? So I have my idle animation. It's 200 frames, 100 to 300. And all I have is my first frame of it. I'm going to go ahead and turn on auto key. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start finding my pose. Now, a lot of this, maybe you get some reference. Maybe you look up like some MMA fighters or something like that, or yours may be a different character, right? Yours may be like somebody who's kind of cocky. You know, like if you put a character in a very scary situation and they don't seem scared, then that's going to say something about their confidence, right, or their intelligence, depending on how you want to spin that. So this guy, he knows that there's a fight up ahead of him, so I'm going to kind of push that. One of the things that kind of helps that is feeling ready. And one of the things that helps you feel ready is sort of a wider stance with lower hips. Right? So think of it this way. If I needed to jump at somebody, right, the first thing I need to do is anticipate down to build up that energy. Right? If I'm already anticipated down, then that saves me time and I can jump more readily. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and sort of get him in sort of a crouched stance to start this pose with. Oh yeah, this has that weird like control in the back for the hips. That, something like this. Just to make this a little easier on me, these like knee controls are too close, so I'm gonna move those out too. This. Now here's something that kind of annoys me with this character, is that if I rotate this, like look at his hand, like the hands are all over the place, right? I'm just trying to control the chest and that hand is going everywhere. So one of the things I can do is grab the upper arm. No, it works on some characters. It was working on the other one. Oh, really? Apparently I don't get this option on this character. Well, that's uncool. Yeah, so never mind. A lot of times there'll be controls on your character's upper arm that allow you to keep it in like a world space instead of a local space. In this case, I'm just going to have to counter animate that. So getting a wider stance, getting this knee sort of pointed out. Same with this one. More like this. Move them down like that. This arm back. So I'm just trying to get some control or some sort of pose that feels a little bit more ready to strike. twist on this. Get the head up. Okay, so it's feeling a little bit better. I'm also going to go ahead and get the tail in a loose pose. I don't really know how this tail is supposed to work. It apparently has an FK-IK option too. Let me try that. It's the FK look. No, that seems like there's going to be more work. Let's try it like this, and then I can kind of get little nuances to the pose with this. Just don't know why it's not staying with it. Okay. So I know I'm spending a lot of time on this tail, but you'll notice that this is actually this is one of the things that we see the most in our character once we go into the game engine, because that's the angle he's pointing at us. I might give my hands just a little bit of information here too. Okay, so this is an okay idle pose. Just gonna tumble around them and look at them. Now, if that's working, select everything, make sure there's a keyframe there, and then I'm gonna go out to 300 and make sure there's a keyframe there too. So I can export this now and replace that, and I wouldn't have any animation, but I would have my character in this new pose. Right? And as you say, if I hit play, I'm not really seeing any updates on anything. So this is one of the few animations that I don't encourage you to work in the pose-to-pose method, right? The reason for that is because there's only one pose. Like, if we try to make another pose, it's either going to be such a subtle change or such a big change that it's going to feel like a change, right? And I don't want it to feel like a change. I want it to feel like the character's in the same pose and just moving a little bit, right? So one of the ways that I work is, you remember the graph editor arrow in Animation Fundamentals? I pretty much do the entire project the same way. Right? I'm going to grab the character's hip control, and I'm just going to start creating the curve that I need to make the hips do what I want them to do. Right? To do that, I'm going to have to sort of change my layout here just so I can see some stuff a little better. I'll move this guy over here, panels, layout, 2 panes side by side. I'll change this to the graph editor just so I can see this open here. Right? And you'll see that now I have my translate X, translate Y, translate Z, all my characters hip control, right? Now, it is possible that what you could do is go through here and just set some really small changes on the key poses, right? Just do like a little bit of something like this, right? So yeah, we could do it that way, but if we watch that, then it feels very like, right? Like it's hard to pose this, right? Because if we think about it, really what this is like it's like a sequence of things, or cycle is a very, very clear word. It's like a series of changes that are gradual, right? That eventually loop back to the start. Bless you. And if I look at my curve that I just generated by doing that, like that's not a very clean curve, right? And then I got that on all of these, right? They all look bad. So I don't usually do it that way. What I do instead, go ahead and delete those. What I do instead is I start with my Translate X and I start adding keys to this. So you may remember if I go to Keys, Add Key Tool, and I select something from this curve, I can middle mouse, click, start drawing whatever I want, right? And this will allow me to get something a little bit more gradual. Now mine's also playing too fast, I just realized that. So right click, playback speed, real time, and you'll see that I have this really subtle motion. In fact, it's too subtle, right? I could undo a few times and fix it, or I could just go in here and stop this, right? And select all of these keys. And so we know that I can hit, I can move these around, right? We know we can do this. But if I hit R for scale, I can also scale these keys. So I can scale that up and down. I can inverse it and do whatever I want to, right? And I can start getting a little bit of a bigger motion that starts to read as sort of the appropriate amount of motion, right? Now, for me, I don't like having to constantly go up here to Key, Add Key Tool. So I'm going to go ahead and make me a shortcut key for that. If I go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and Hotkey Editor, it'll pull up my hotkey editor over here. And I can choose a category. I usually go to Editors and then Graph Editor. And it's right here. It's the Add Key Tool. I wire this to T myself. T already does something in the graph editor. It centers your view, but I rarely use that. I actually never use that. And so for me, T is not a key I'm going to use in the graph editor, so I'll use it here. If you have some other shortcut key that you would prefer to use, that's fine. This is just one I know I'm not going to use. So save and close. And so now at any time I want to, I can hit T and start adding a little bit more to this, right? So I want it to feel so to me it's still feeling a little low energy. I'm just going to kind of go in here, change some of this a little bit, get this one down here, and sort of get an extra bobble in there, right? There we go. Now he's starting to feel like he's moving a little bit more. Okay. So we got a little bit of motion in there. Can you all see that? That's kind of, all right, let's turn on this light back here so you can see it. Okay, so again, this is just kind of feeling it out to see, how I feel about it. Like this motion right here, maybe that's a little too big, a little too sharp. Maybe I want to soften that just a little bit and have some overshoot on it or something like that. Okay. So here's the interesting thing though. Watch this animation and notice that, like, what happens when I get to frame 300? What happens next?
It stops for a second.
And so the animation stops for a second, and you'll notice on the timeline it just immediately goes back to frame 100, like the animation starts over, right? But the character kind of sort of seems to settle to a stop, and then he starts moving again, right? Which makes sense, right? Because we're easing in on that keyframe, and we're easing out of that keyframe, right? But if we think about it, this animation's never going to stop playing. It's going to loop infinitely, right? So that means the frame that comes after this frame is this frame. Right? And the way that transitions through that keyframe is important. Right now, when it transitions through it, it's getting to it, it's slowing down to a stop, and then it's starting again, right? And I just want it to look like it's continuing to go through there. Now, I could eyeball this and say, well, I know that this curve is going to go up. I know this curve is kind of coming up here. So I could try to do something like this, right? And that would make sense because it's going to flow up into this and then like this, right? But that's kind of hard to visualize. So that's why I sort of deleted those other animations out of there. If I select all of my character, and then select all of the channels over here, just to make sure I can see it all, right? I'm going to go to View in my graph editor and turn on Infinity. Now, you'll notice in here, with Infinity on, the way we're viewing this is after we get to frame 300, it's just going to hold that keyframe constantly, right? It's just going to continue to hold it forever before and after our first and last keyframes. But if I select everything again and go to curves, and on pre-infinity I'll choose cycle, and curves post-infinity I'll choose cycle. Now when I look at that, you'll see that before and after just loops forever, right? I have an infinite cycle of that animation. And really the benefit of this is now I can adjust this tangent, and as I adjust it here, you'll see it changes it over here, and as I adjust it here, you'll see it changes it here. And I can make that sort of flow into itself more seamlessly. This is a way you can also play your run looping forever and getting to see that. So we'll look at that a little bit more in the run animation in a minute. So I have some stuff going on my Translate X. Let's go ahead and start adding some stuff on my Translate Y. What direction is Translate Y? Everybody's just pointing out. Yes, it's up and down, right? Translate Y is usually the up and down axis. So let's go ahead and start adding some up and down motion in here. So T, a little bit of this.
Oh, so does the infinity, it affects every channel?
If I had it all selected, yeah. So yeah, and I did when I said this. So now my up and down, you'll see it's doing it a little bit. It's kind of hard to tell that we're getting much of that up and down motion. In all honesty, I don't want too much of it. But I'll go ahead and grab this, hold down R, sort of scale that up so we can start to see it. Yeah, it's feeling a little bit better. All right. Okay, so translate Z, that's the forward and back motion, right? So I'll go to the side. And then again, just start hitting T. Let me send my character forward a little bit. Let's see if that works. I'm barely seeing any of that. Sometimes I give it too much just so I can see it. So I'm going to start creating these really drastic curves. It turns out that's not really that drastic. Let's scale it up even more. There we go. So that's way more than I really wanted. but now I'm able to see when and where it's happening. I'll do maybe a little bit of something like this. And then I can scale this back down, sort of get a little bit more realistic. So something to consider is maybe you don't want your character to feel, maybe you're wanting your character to feel more energetic, right? So maybe you got more of that up and down motion, right, as the character's doing that. Or maybe you want it to feel like, you know, he's rearing to go. Maybe you have more of the forward and backward motion. So again, I'll go in here. I'll make sure that these kind of transition the way I want them to. You know what, I do. I kind of want some more of this up and down motion in here. See what we can do with that. Even do with more. So I can scale it this way as well. And just continue to okay. Yeah, so I'm okay with that. So, obviously, I could export this out. We look at it in the engine. I want to do a couple more things before I do that, because all I've really done is translates. And translates are nice and all, but that's not really where we're going to start to feel this the most, right? So if right now my translates on my torso, right, are just my character sort of sliding from side to side, right? What I want to do is I want to add some drag on the character's head, right? So as we move in one direction, the head will drag back, and then we'll overshoot. All of that work with this remote. Nobody saw it. Look at that. I'm up here puppeteering for y'all. So I'm going to add some drag into that, and I'm going to use my graph editor to kind of understand where that's coming from, right? Because my translate Z is my forward and back motion, right? My rotate X is my forward and back rotation, right? So what I can do is I can have both of these on my screen at the same time. Right? Not that you have to, but I can. And I can just start making curves on my rotate, right? So as my character moves forward here, right, I could drag backwards. So as we're moving forward, maybe right here, and add a keyframe here that drags them back. And then after we reach our forward position here and change directions, I can have it change directions too. Right, so I could do a little bit of something like that. So you're going to see that it drags forward and then overshoots. And then as it's coming back here, it'll hit this back position and then overshoot in the other direction. Right? So I'm able to kind of control a lot of this motion. So now we're going to get some like, I don't like the beginning part there. I think I just need this one to not go quite as far. So you're starting to notice the character kind of getting a little bit of drag back and forth, right? Okay. So, of course, I'm going to continue to go through the rotate Y, the rotate Z as well, right? But I wanted to show you a little trick here, which is I can copy this. Right? There's a couple of different ways that I could copy this. One of them being, I currently have my rotate X. I could go up here and select my chest's rotate X, right? And I could just go through and make this curve kind of mimic it, right? That's the wrong way. Just kind of add my key poses in a similar way, right? And I could get a little bit of that same overlapping action, right? But there's actually a cheat I could do with this as well, right? So I have both of them selected here, or both of them up on the screen. What I want to do is I want to delete all the keys off of my chest, except for the first one, right? At least on the rotate X. And then I want to select all of these keys, and you have to be careful with this. If I select all of them here and hit Control C, and then select here, I can paste them onto this keyframe. Now if I hit Control V, it's going to do that. That doesn't work exactly right. So I wanted to paste it where my time slider is. So I'll move that back to a frame 100. Control V, that isn't right either, because what it really just did was move that entire curve to the same location, right? And I don't want it to be in the same location. I wanted to paste this curve at this location. So I'm going to go to Edit, and this, Edit, Paste, and choose my options here. And I'm just going to choose this Insert and Connect. And then when I hit Paste keys, why did that not work? Oh, it's because I didn't have it selected. Select this, Control C, select that, Control V. And so now I'm pasting that same curve onto a new control, right? Now, since it's going to cycle forever, the other thing I could do is just grab that curve and have it happen 1 or 2 frames later. So by doing that, now I'm just sort of building some of that offset into it, right? So it's a nice way of being able to reuse curves as well. Now you have to be kind of careful with doing that, that you always keep this curve the same number of frames long, because otherwise the cycle will start to mess up. But as long as you do, if I were to do that, say offset it by a few frames, right? And then go back to my original 300 frames, you'll see that as long as frame 300 and 100 match, 100, 300, as long as the image looks the same, then you're okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work down the entire character in the same way that I would for any other animation that I'm doing, right? When I animated that little girl doing the backflip, I'm going to start with the root control. I'm going to make sure the feet are okay and sort of lining up with that for weight, right? I'm going to work my way up the spine to the head, and I'm going to work my way down the arms to the fingers, right? And I'm going to touch every curve on this in order to get it doing exactly what I want. Eventually, like if you're adding these curves in, the motion's going to start getting kind of big, And that scale tool will really help you to sort of pull back, or maybe it's not big enough and you need to increase it more. Now, if we've done all this correctly, which this is really early in this process to be exporting, I can export this character now, though. And it's just going to export it straight to my same location. Export. Yes, I want to replace the Liger idle. And make sure again that your export object set is set to the selection you needed. Make sure it's exporting to the right folder and with the right name. And if so, if all of that exported out, then what I should be able to do now is just go in here and right click on Liger idle and say re-import. And now I get this. Well, let me let him. Right. So now that's feeling a little more accurate. Now, I'm not crazy about how those arms are sort of bobbling with his chest. I'll probably manually put some drag in there on that. But this is a pretty good spot to start with this animation, right? And this is one of the ways to do it. Like, make some changes, see if you like it, export it into the game, and see if it looks good there too. Recognize that most of the time, the player is going to be looking at your character like this, right? So one of the things that's definitely needed is we need some tail animation, right? One of the other little things is like where that tail is right now seems to be blocking this arm a little bit. So maybe I lower the tail so it doesn't get in the way of any of my animations, right? In the same way that we would set up our camera early on to see what the viewer is going to see when they watch the animation, that's what we're doing here. We've set up our portal in which the player is going to experience our animations. Now we're just going to change our animations or update our animations, polish and clarify our animations in order to make sure that those communicate well to the player when they're playing it. So, questions? Concerns? All right. So that's really the majority of what I wanted to go over today. What I'm going to do, we got quite a bit of time left. We got like an hour and a half left. I'm going to go ahead and save out this video, upload it to YouTube, and then the rest of the class is yours. You can keep working on your project. If you have questions, I'll be happy to hop around and chat with you, help you get yours working if you're having issues with anything. Yeah. Questions one last time?
Do you have never mind. I don't know how to phrase that.
Okay.
I mean, I guess, I don't know if this is really like a question, it's sort of just me like thinking out loud, but like, so when you do like sort of like in an idol, and it's like with this character because he has a tail, and it's like doing sort of like a tail twitch or something, it's like kind of within the idol having like special like sort of recurring movements. I mean, is that just kind of like
well, what I would do, so that's one of the reasons I made this idle a little longer, right? Is we don't want to see that tail like repeating too much. And if it's starting to repeat too much, maybe we need to make our idle even longer, right? And so really what I'll probably do is I'll do a little test on that here in a minute and just sort of get like my thinking is I don't want a big sway, right? I just kind of want like a little bit of a ripple going through it and whatever its pose is. And so, but yes, I think what we're trying to avoid in this is, like with everything, letting the audience see the man behind the curtain, right? You want them to feel like that character really is idling in a similar pose infinitely, not that it's playing the same animation over and over again. Right. If your idle's too short and it just does one action over and over again, it's going to feel, I always call it ping-pongy, like it's like you bounce back and forth between two poses. Or you're going to just see the cycle, sort of in the same way that you see like a texture repeat. We'll just feel that texture repeat in the motion, right? And so like you kind of have to sort of balance that. Like right now, one of the things I think is very distinctive is the way the chest leans back a little bit too much and then comes forward. So I'll probably pull back some of that. One of the little things you can do, if you're going between two poses, the best way to do that is to not come back the same way you went there, if that makes sense. So like his tail, I'm gonna have his tail swing to one side. Maybe I'll have it do that a little high, and then I'll come back a little low, right? And then instead of making like a wave back and forward, it's gonna be making this like slow, like maybe a figure 8 or like a circle shape, right? And then that starts to feel more like it's just in a pattern or in a repeating process. So you really just want to make sure you can't see the repetition as much. What's happening?
We're loading the report.
Oh. My guy's idling.
They're idling.
Yeah. We're idle over here.
Theirs looks cooler than ours. We should go to their class.
No. We didn't make this. We borrowed this from the internet.
That's what we're
Okay.
gonna do.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing.
That's pretty much our entire major. We borrow things from the internet and we make them better. Okay. So yeah, I would probably try to get that tail doing like a bigger pattern. If it's feeling too repetitive, then I would just make the idle longer. So the thing to recognize is we don't want to get too far off the base though, right? Because like, let's say I wanted to do something like my character's gonna stretch and look around or something, right? At any point, the player can hit the W key and make the character start running, right? So really, I want my idle to be, bless you. I want my idle to be able to transition into that run as smoothly as possible. So that's kind of leading into what we're gonna be doing next class period, which is the run cycle, right? Or walk cycle if your character's walking or jogging or whatever they're doing. And for me, what I usually do on the run is for a game engine, I try to start that cycle on the pose that is closest to what our idle is, right? And in this case, it's probably gonna be like the passing pose or maybe the down pose instead of the contact pose. Because as soon as I hit the W key, if it's going to the contact pose, he's immediately going to snap with those legs out, right? I'm wanting it to snap to something not too far away from this. So I'll probably have him snap to, it's probably the passing pose is probably a good one. The people wouldn't notice if there was a small hitch in the passing pose anyway, because it's kind of fast. So, does that make sense? All right, so again, just keep iterating. It's gonna get better and better and better until you run out of time. And then, if you have any questions on the way though, I'm trying to layer in as much work time into this project as I can. How you feeling in terms of on task? Do you feel like we have enough time to get this one done?
I don't know.
Are you gonna try doing the 2D? Okay. Well, I'll also go ahead and share those videos. I think it'd be cool if you could. I mean, I think it's Unreal and Unity are both. It's all going to work the same. Like the animator's job is really very similar, but part of the job is getting that implemented into the engine, and that's just an extra skill you can put on a resume. So whichever one you're really wanting to be able to show off. So. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and upload this to YouTube, and then we'll have whatever y'all want to do from there. It's up to you. I'll talk to you soon. No, I'll talk to you now, I guess. I'm not hanging up, am I?